So let's kick off. So welcome everyone to the second of our Elevating in Women in Leadership taster sessions. So thanks for joining us as we're going to be exploring these topics over the next few weeks. So let me just move that on. Brilliant. So my name is Orla Power and I design and deliver our Elevating Women in Leadership programs. But I'm also joined by two fantastic speakers today. So that's Mary Gregory and Nikki Atkins. So they're going to be your presenters today. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, but they're going to be taking you through confidence and resilience, which is a good job really, because as I say, my voice is a bit croaky today. And we're going to be running, hopefully you all know, these are 4 taster sessions. So we've already run the career activism. So that is available as a recording if you missed that. And they are standalone, so if you're just joining today, welcome. And then we've got 2 more sessions over the next couple of weeks. So next week we've got leading with impact and brand, and then adding strategic value. And we really do want to make these sessions, you know, the purpose is to share an overview of how we're delivering our programs. So to help you if you're thinking about launching your own programs, but we also want to give as much development and insights that we can in 50 minutes or so. As I say, we've got a worksheet, so that should have been emailed to you, and Ugne, if you can pop that in the chat to use afterwards. We're not sharing the slides, but the points, everything that's covered today is in the worksheet. So any of the models that we use, they are written up in that worksheet for you to reflect on. And I wanted to mention about individual support. So for those of you joining for your own development, we really encourage you to find a buddy to talk through what comes up for you in these sessions. So that could be someone in your own workplace. Maybe even better would be to get a group together and share what you've been thinking about here and start your own development group. Or I did mention last time that we'd link people up. If people on this session wanted to link up with buddies, then we'll do that. So I have been busy connecting people that wanted buddies. So I think I've more or less got to the end of the list. But if I've missed anyone, then do let us know on ewill@lhh.com and I'll link you up with a buddy. And the purpose of the buddy is really to be your thinking partner as you reflect on the worksheets and what comes out of these sessions. And then lastly, we're on a webinar format. We've got a lot of people joining, which is fantastic. So it is a bit limited, but we will be doing, so Nikki and Mary will be running polls and we'll get you to use the chat. So we'll make it as interactive as we can. And we're aiming to complete within about 50 minutes. So you'll get a chance to have a refresh, or you're welcome to stay. We usually finish with a few Q&A and answering any questions that we haven't picked up during the session. So in the last session, I took you through the first part of the programme from the launch. So before this strengthening confidence and resilience workshop in the programme, you would have attended a discovery session. So those discovery sessions, we run those with smaller groups of about 8 to 10 for a couple of hours. And it's really an opportunity to reflect on what was covered in the previous session and share those successions and any actions taken since the last workshop. So I know it's only a week since the last time we were together, but if anyone has taken any actions as a result of career activism in the last week, we'd love to see on the chat anything that you've been able to put into place, whether that's having a conversation with your manager or increasing your network, whatever that is, any action that you've taken would be lovely to see. And then the second part of those discovery sessions, oh, I can see, Louise, you've been building your network. Well done. Yeah, adding to that strategic network that we talked about and discussed with my line manager. Amazing. So keep those coming because they'll help others get some ideas of the sorts of actions to take. So as well as reviewing actions and successes, we also use it as an opportunity to really focus on any specific personal challenges or topics that the group want to do a deeper dive on. And we use a variety of facilitation and coaching tools to really help participants explore ways forward that are really relevant to their organisation. So there's a workshop where we discuss all of the themes like we covered last time, And then this discovery session is an opportunity to really personalize and really think about how that impacts you. And many of these coaching groups continue long after the program has finished. So they're really worthwhile. And we run those throughout the program itself. So today we're going to be focusing on this workshop, strengthening confidence and resilience. Let me just check into the chat. So any more on the chat? So reviewed my career to date, lovely. So we talked about that career lifeline. That was really good. And thinking about the choices, yeah, lovely. So some lovely actions coming through. So let's focus on this workshop today. So this workshop today is all about helping you focus on your key strengths. Remember, I shared last time that from our research, women who are successful in accelerating their careers exhibit a high degree of confidence. And something that can get in the way of this is doubting our potential. We're also going to look at resilience. So women tend to be managing multiple demands on our energy across work and home. So how can we manage these effectively and stop striving to be superhuman? Maybe just be super and human would be a really good start. And then we're looking at limiting beliefs and holding on to negative thoughts. So we can be quite hard on ourselves. So how do we reframe our mindset to think more positively? So by the end of this session, you can answer the question, what do I need to be at my most resilient and confident best? So the first part of the session, obviously with the participants and with you as well, come back. We'd obviously love to hear from all of you, but let's have a quick energizer. So this session, part of this session is about energy. So let's see where your energy is at the start of the week. So give me a 1 to 5 on how charged your battery is today. So we're early in the week, so some 2s and 3s, some 4s. Mine was definitely a 1 when I woke up this morning. I mean, tested positive for COVID yesterday, but I love running these sessions, so I feel my energy is around about a 3 and hopefully a 4 or 5 by the end of this session. So yeah, it doesn't matter where you are with your energy. The point is to notice it. And we're going to be talking about what we do with our energy and how to get ourselves into the most energized state that we can. But it starts from an awareness of where we're starting from. So why confidence and resilience as topics? Well, I've mentioned these already. I've not put anything on the male side because I'm not saying that men don't experience these things as well. But we know that these are themes from research that can create headwinds and slow women's progression. And for example, yes, of course, men do have negative thoughts and limiting beliefs. However, we know that women tend to hold on to them for longer. So that's why it might become more of a headwind for us. So I'm going to hand over to Mary, I think, to start us with confidence and resilience. Brilliant.
Yes, hello. Hello, everybody. And can't see any of you, but lovely to know that you're out there and lovely to see your responses on the chat there as well. So let's start off looking at confidence and resilience, which is a big area for us as women leaders. And confidence and resilience is so important in terms of underpinning how we can be successful. So we kick this part of the session off really by exploring what does confidence mean and what is the difference between confidence and resilience. And when we look at confidence, we focus it much more around it's your self-belief. It's how you see yourself, perceive yourself, the things you might say to yourself, all of those things build into our confidence. And it's something that we recognise can ebb and flow. So we do focus on the programme in supporting you to develop strategies and things that you can actually practically do to help maintain and give your confidence a chance to be more constant rather than ebbing and flowing away. Because let's face it, in life, we all get challenged at times. There are always things going on that might make us shrink back and think, oh, can I possibly do that? But we want to help you develop ways of being able to manage yourself so that your confidence is much more constant than ebbing and flowing away. And then with resilience, sometimes resilience gets referred to as toughness. And actually resilience isn't really that at all. It's more to do with your bounce back ability. So your ability to navigate challenging circumstances and still keep going and learn and come up through those circumstances a stronger, wiser person on the back of it. So the way we kick off, though, with looking at confidence as resilience is to start looking at your strengths. And we believe that, your strengths is focusing on a strengths approach is a foundation to help you strengthen your confidence. So we'd like you to consider, though, how does knowing our strengths help us lead with more confidence? So we'd like to invite you to share in the chat your thoughts around how knowing your strengths will help you be more confident as a leader. And while you're popping things in the chat, I'm going to have a look at what you're sharing, and I'm going to just invite Nikki, who is going to share a really interesting story around why focusing on our strengths is so valuable. Over to you, Nikki.
Fabulous, thanks, Mary. And actually, perhaps in the light of the sporting theme, I noticed someone put in the chat that they were at the Grand Prix yesterday, so that must have been full of energy then. But yes, as they said, perhaps losing a bit of energy today. And I want to tell you a story about Daley Thompson, who many of you might know is one of the greatest decathletes of all time. And the decathlon, as you probably know, is 10 events over a series of days. You build up points depending on how you're doing. And in 1980, it was Daley Thompson's first Olympics. And his coach said to him, what do you want to do? How do you want to approach the training for this? And Daley Thompson said, well, actually, I want to focus on the 1500 meters because, as you may or may not know, Daley Thompson or certainly at that time, was short, quite stocky. Running was not really his thing. So he said, the 1500 meters, that's my weakest event. And his coach said, well, actually, do you know what? We're going to do things slightly differently here. What we're actually going to do is we're going to focus on the other 9 events where you're your strongest. We're going to see if we can do even better with those 9 events. And that is exactly what Daley Thompson did. And consequently, he went into the Olympics, and the 1500 meters was the last event. And by the time he got to the 1500 meters, he'd already built up enough points that he'd already won the gold medal before he even started the 1500 meters. And so all he had to do was to get around the track because he'd already won the gold medal. And we're telling you this story because, we tend to focus on our weaknesses rather than our strengths. And actually, whilst you can't completely ignore the weaknesses, Daley Thompson definitely needed to actually get around the track. What we know is that there are some real strong reasons as to why we should focus on our strengths. Sorry, Mary. And of course, actually, we just need to check into the chat, don't we?
We do. I'm just going to have a quick look because some great things coming through in the chat. So Tess has said credibility through self-belief is why it's useful. We don't have to try so hard because we're fine with our strengths, and our strengths speak for ourselves, from Gail. We had another one further down, which I'm just going to get. There's been loads of really great comments here, so thank you, everybody. Oh, yeah, awareness about my strengths is the ground under my feet, to have hands and head in the air. I love that. Mm-hmm. So when we're clear of our strengths, it means we can forget ourselves a bit and focus on what we need to be focusing on, which is great. And just so many comments here. You can be a role model for others to focus on their strengths, helps you to be confident in your decisions. I think we view our strengths on what feedback we get, so helps others believe in you as well. So you start to believe in yourself. That's a great one from Suzanne. And yeah, just loads and loads and loads. Let me just pick one more up. Confidence in my work, not only have it, but let others know my attitude means 80% of how they value you. So there's a real exit from Olga there saying about it makes her feel more confident that other people know that you've got them because you're playing to your strengths. And Stacey, strengths enable you to enable and inspire others. Great, thank you. So many good comments there. Sorry we can't read them all out.
Thanks, Mary. And actually, there were 2 more that I noticed. One was that strengths comes from enjoyment. Jennifer, I noticed you put that.
Yeah.
I also saw earlier that Kate said something about strengths enable you to be your authentic self. So I think, Kate, you must have read some of the things that we're going to say on our slide, actually.
Yeah, because strengths could be your USP here as well, which is from Juliet, which is a similar one.
Yeah, fabulous. So absolutely lots of things here. And I think so strengths help us to excel. That's what we know. They boost confidence, resilience, resourcefulness, and they enable us to be authentic, as someone has already mentioned. And for this part of the programme, what we do is we tend to use an assessment called Strength Scope, which is very popular with our clients. Some of you may have heard of Strength Scope before. We're not going to give you that assessment today, but there is an opportunity on the worksheet to reflect on some of these things that we're talking about now in connection with Strength Scope. But it enables you to think about the times when you're feeling most energized, when you're feeling in flow, as we describe it, firing on all 4 cylinders, and when it's highly likely you'll be working to your strengths. So I'm just going to move on to a slide which is just going to show us a little bit what the report looks like. Ola, if you're able to move me forwards to slide 17, that would be fabulous. So this is what the report looks like when you see it. So you do this report assessment in advance of this particular workshop, and we make sure that you have the report in advance so you've got a chance to reflect. And you can see, if you look at this diagram here, that in the middle you can see this person, so this is a sample report, you can see this person's 7 significant strengths, as we choose to call them. And then moving outwards from the middle, you can see all of the possible 24 strengths that this person might have had, and whether there are any clusters. So for example, with this person, you can see that they've got a lot of strengths in the relational quadrant. And I really want to emphasize here that there's no right or wrong, but this is about helping you to understand what energizes you. So once we've given you a chance to look at the report, then just moving on to the next slide, we then do a number of breakout sessions on this workshop to give you an opportunity to reflect. Ola, if I can have slide 18, that would be fabulous. So what we do then is we look at strengths in overdrive, and also looking at how to dial down those strengths. So, if you think about the things that really energize you, so for example, enthusiasm is one of my strengths, and that's something that really energizes you, but I need to make sure that I know when that's kind of going into overdrive, perhaps when I need to dial it down a little bit more. So we do a number of reflective exercises to enable you to work out what it is that you need to do in these situations, when do they go into overdrive, and as it says here, knowing what your triggers are. When are those moments when those strengths will go into overdrive, and what do you need to do? What are the kind of habits and routines that you might have that are unhelpful in these particular situations? Okay, so that's the strength scope assessment, and in real life this would take us to about 75 minutes into the session, and so then we give everybody a really good 20-minute break, time to move around, a little bit of an energizer, and then after that we then, having understood that strengths energize us, we then spend a little bit of time looking at how we use that energy. And I'm going to hand back to Mary now.
Yes, indeed we are, because as you will probably know, as a woman, as a working woman and a leader in an organisation, we are spinning many, many different plates. And this is a fantastic quote from Sophie Kinsella. Like most of us, I'm used to juggling about 52 roles in life: wife, mother, sister, friend, author. Sometimes I feel a bit multiple personality, and I can totally relate to that quote from her. And the whole idea as women, we are often juggling and spinning those plates to pay attention to all the different many elements of our lives. So the way we start looking at energy is to start thinking about the different roles that we do take in life and how they show up for us. And we use a model that was developed some time ago by a psychologist called Donald Super. And what is useful about this model is that it helps us identify not only the different roles, it kind of brings to our awareness the many different roles that we could be taking. So here we have child, student. Leisurite was actually a word or a term developed by Donald to describe the amount of time we spend in our lives when we're at leisure. Being a citizen, a community citizen, worker, parent, partner, homemaker, all those different roles. But what this model is about is trying to illustrate that at different times in our lives, those different roles might dominate more than others. And that the different stages, what he's got here, are the different life stages of growth, exploration, establishment, maintenance, and disengagement. And although he's got our age group up here at the top, so from age 5 to age 90 around the top of the rainbow, it's not set in stone. So for many women, you may be establishing your career in your 20s or 30s. For me, I know for me personally, I was a lot older than that. I was kind of, what dominated for me as a single parent was looking after my daughter. So parenting was really the dominant thing in my life up until probably my 40s. And then I began to think about, what do I want for a career? I hadn't really thought about it until then. So, you know, it does vary depending on what's happening in your life personally. But this is quite a useful model that we explore to get you to consider the different roles that you're playing and how they're impacting you. And then where are you? Are you still establishing yourself, or are you in a place of maintaining your career? And actually, I think it comes in cycles, because I can think about times, you know, in my 40s where I was establishing, then I might have gone into a bit of maintaining. But I certainly feel, and I'm moving into my 60s now, and I certainly feel like I'm starting to establish again, because I'm thinking about the next stage of my life. What do I want the next stage of my working life to look like? Retirement is not what I want to do currently, for sure. So this gives us a really good illustration, and we invite you to reflect on it, and then we invite you to consider what stage your life is at. So we're going to run a poll. So Agni is going to put a poll up for us shortly, and we're going to invite you to just say, where is your life at the moment in terms of your career? Are you just exploring options? Are you establishing yourself? Or are you in sort of like maintaining stage of your career? And we're just going to have a look at that poll and see what comes through in terms of the group as they're coming through today. Amazing to see all the different whizzy. Great. So it looks like from what we're getting so far, we've got 500 on the call, so we're not quite there yet. I'm going to keep going and then come back to the poll as we go through. So if we can go to the next slide, Orla, or is the poll done?
Yeah, let's publish the poll, because I don't think I can move on until the poll's published.
Right, okay. We're nearly there, actually, nearly there.
Yeah, Ugne, if you can publish that for us.
Yes. So that's published now, and what we can see for this group then, 15% in this group is a representation are in exploring your career and working out what options you've got and what the choices are. The majority on this call are in establishing, so building your career experience, developing the depth that you need to establish what it is you want in your career. And then 31% are at maintenance, so keeping up to date, developing the breadth of what you want. And a very small percentage are what we would call disengagement, moving away from paid work, maybe rebalancing your time, maybe thinking about retirement. So that's interesting to see the balance that there is just on this call. So it's useful to have an appreciation of what stage you are at. Has everyone seen the results there? I hope they have. I'm not sure whether they have or not, but yeah. There we go. So and what we do in the program is get you to think about your life currently, and how you spend your time and where your energy gets used up currently, and how you would like your life to be in the future. And we say 5 years, it doesn't have to be 5 years, it can be 2 years, it can be 3 years, whatever is the timeline that you want to work on. But it's comparing how things are for you now with what your ideal is, and then thinking about, well, how could I go about achieving this? Because sometimes just some quite simple fixes can make a difference in terms of how you might go about achieving it. And a method that we use to do this is called time pies. So if you can just share what a time pie might look like. So here we can see on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a time pie of how somebody might have presented their life and the roles in their life as they currently see it. And then the ideal roles are on the right-hand side of the screen. And it really gives you a chance to think about, what is it I really want for my life, and how is my work going to contribute to that? So, for example, this person obviously wants to have more leisure, so they've got to be thinking about how do they go about establishing their time at work, their time in the other parts of their lives where they have more leisure. and they want to do less studying, maybe a bit more time as a parent, maybe a bit more time for themselves, as they satiating their inner child, as it were. I think child refers to your inner child really there, and quite not so much time on homemaking, but more time with partner is how this person is wanting to start to think about shifting things.
And Mary, there was a comment in the chat about retirement doesn't necessarily mean stopping work. It could be other forms of sort of non-paid work, whether you're supporting charities, doing more work in your community.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
I'm in that phase. I like to think of it as regeneration rather than retirement.
Yes, and you're still contributing to the community and to the world, whether you're in paid work or not. I was talking to a lady yesterday who is retired, but actually is a leader in a local charity, and doing a lot of work for refugees, actually, to do with Ukraine and things. So yeah, it absolutely doesn't necessarily mean that you're stopping contributing and you're stopping working. It's just your interests might be focused in a different way. And I think the thing to get as well, and what Donald Super notices, is that often for women, as we go into that parenting role, we sometimes power down our careers. We don't spend so much attention on our careers, only at a later time to power up. And I know that certainly happened for me. That's why my career kind of took off much later, because while I was a parent, I was totally focused on bringing my daughter up. I did work. I had a business that worked for me and it all worked very well, but it wasn't my priority. But once she grew up and didn't need me anymore, it was very much, right, I want to get on and have a career now. And that's when you start powering up. And it's important not to forget to power back up when your children have left the nest, or your interests and the demands that are being made on you, could be maybe by elderly parents as well, have shifted and changed. But deciding what your ideal is, what's useful, and then thinking about how you go about getting that. And then one very important way of being able to manage our energy and make sure that we can shift our roles and create more of the life that we want for ourselves and the time pie that we want for ourselves is through our boundaries. So, Nikki, what have you got to tell us about boundaries?
Yeah, it's a particularly important topic in my life at the moment, Mary. So, I mean, both at work and at home, actually, because I've decided that I want to work differently. So I've had to put boundaries, some new boundaries in place, really, with some of the organisations I work with around my availability. And then at the same time, on perhaps a lighter note, at home, I've got two children, one university age, one just finishing school. And so I put some new boundaries in place around expectations as to who is going to be producing the food in my house moving forward. So I'm not sure that I've been heard loudly enough, so I perhaps need to recontract a little bit on that. But yeah, really important topic for me. And in fact, just kind of taking that a little bit further, and what I would love you to do is to put in the chat, actually, any examples of that you've got around boundaries that you feel you need to manage a little bit better in your own lives. So do pop them in the chat whilst I carry on talking, and then we'll come back to those perhaps in a minute. But we also talk about managing energy differently on the workshop. Mary's talked about the different roles that you have and the different roles that you have about powering up and powering down. And I can see, actually, I'm going to mention it now because there's some lovely examples coming up in the chat around, Manuela, you put about overtime boundaries. And Catherine, I get lots of invitations to do things. Managing a 4-day week, working from home, finishing when I'm supposed to. I think this is a really big thing for many people. I noticed that whizzing up, kids' bedtime is carved in blood. There's some strong feeling there behind that. I think we might all relate to that. So really think about what are those boundaries, and this is a fabulous time to reflect on that. What's working for you, and how well do you actually put the boundaries in place? So sorry, Ola, I know I was kind of talking on to both slides there, but there's also something here about that we talk about on the workshop about the types of energy that you have. And what are the ones that you need to strengthen? What are the areas that you already do well? So we're going to do a poll. If you could launch that poll for us, and I'll come back to the results in a minute. But around, what type of energy do you need to strengthen? But I'll just talk to those whilst you're filling in your own thing on the poll. There's spiritual energy, and of course that's about your values, your visions, your leadership skills. The physical energy, recuperation, how you manage that kind of, do you give yourself time out, eating for energy, physical activity, because there's so much, isn't there, in the media about what we need to do around all of these areas. Emotional energy, I think that's such a critical one for me. Emotional awareness, what are the emotions that drain you? They can be positive or negative emotions. Expressing your feelings, creating helpful emotions. And the mental energy, choosing your attitude. Sometimes it's not as easy as we would like to think to do that, but that kind of conscious breathing as well, and regaining perspective is really important. I can see we're getting through the results of the poll, and I'll just refer to a couple of things in the chat, because you really want to, you could use all 4 here too. Definitely need all of those things. And it's fabulous to see what people do. We do an exercise on the workshop to see what people do in these particular areas. We also do an energy assessment before the workshop, which we refer back to when we discuss all these topics. Yeah, and I think how we're doing with the poll, looks like I can see a few things going up there. So we asked the question, what type of energy do you need to strengthen and increase your resilience? And I can see we've got some of this in all of the areas, perhaps more in the physical and the mental energy. So after we've done this exercise, again, we give you the opportunity to work together, to learn from each other, to reflect out loud what's working, what do you need to do differently. Yeah, and it is absolutely, I can see in the chat, these things flux and impact one another when they're in the kind of the right place. Important not to neglect any of these. Yes, absolutely, really important. So after this, we have an exercise where we encourage you to kind of walk and talk with your buddies, and then we head into the lunch space. We give you a really good hour for lunch on this particular module. So we give you a really good break, encourage you to walk away from your screens, have some time out, renew your energy. And then what we also do is on all these workshops, we invite a speaker in, somebody who can really inspire you, somebody that you can learn from. And this is usually about 45 minutes kind of after the lunch break. And then we give you a final opportunity after that to kind of stretch your legs before we head into the last part of the afternoon. So I'm just going to hand back to Mary, who's just going to talk you through what we do for the second part of the day.
Yes, so once we've had the speaker, which we're all inspired by, and they've usually shared a lot about their own story and the challenges they've had to navigate to get to the position that they're in, we then move into looking at mindsets and beliefs. And it really is true that what you tell yourself really does matter. And LHH has conducted research that has identified what it is that successful women do. And one of the things that differs a really successful woman from those that aren't really achieving what they want to achieve in their careers is linked to their mindset and beliefs. And they hold beliefs that really, really support them to overcome whatever challenges they might face. So it's almost like there's a challenge, right? I'm going to find a way around this. I'm going to find a solution to it. And that is a mindset and belief that really, really, really helps them. So it's worth considering what your own mindsets and beliefs are. And we do invite our participants to explore this as we go through the programme. And what are those mindsets that you hold that might help you? And what are those that might hinder you as well and might stop you from fulfilling your potential? So, for example, you might be asked to speak to a senior leader, you might want to give them some feedback, and you might have a belief that's going on saying, I can't possibly say that. Who am I to give them feedback and tell them what my opinion is? That might be one belief that you're holding, or set of beliefs that you're holding, that could hold you back. Alternatively, you might hold a belief that actually, I'm a leader myself and I have a right to speak up and share what I'm noticing. That would be a much more empowering set of beliefs that are going to help you to give that feedback to that leader. So just share in the chat anything that you have that you think around, your mindset and beliefs and what might help or hinder you. And while we're doing that, we're going to move into a model here that helps us look at the unhelpful mindsets and beliefs that not just women but men also have, But because this programme is obviously focused on supporting women, there may be some that we bring up here that particularly resonate for you. And after we've gone through these different mindset and beliefs, we're going to do another poll to see which is the one that resonates most strongly for you. So have a look at the ones that we're going to bring up. And the first one that we're going to bring up is, I've been getting away with it, but I'm bound to be found out soon. Commonly known as imposter syndrome. And I'm kind of, usually during the workshop, I'll say, hands up who resonates with that. And probably most people, if not everybody, puts their hands up to that one, because I think to be a successful person in the world, most successful people have an imposter, and it's an indication that you're out of your comfort zone and you're doing great things. So it's almost like a positive, but also a negative, because it doesn't make us feel great to be saying those sorts of things to ourselves. Then there's the next one. I'm not good enough. There's no point in trying. So that little voice that's constantly putting yourself down, you know, your inner critic just telling you that you're just not good enough. The next one. If I don't do things perfectly, then I have failed. And that is that perfectionist voice. I'm sure on the call today, we've got a few people who are really committed to perfection. And the sad thing about perfectionism is the more that you try and achieve it, the more it eludes you, because you're never going to get to that perfect result that you're seeking, because you're a perfectionist. The two things just go together. It just will never happen. So again, it causes you to be driven, maybe causes you to be exhausted, but it's a voice that's not necessarily helping you. And the next one is, what if it all goes wrong? So excessively worrying, and through that excessive worrying, almost paralyzing yourself, not being able to take action because you're just worried it's all going to go wrong. And moving on to the next one, I need to know in advance that my actions won't backfire on me. So a real intolerance of uncertainty. And when you don't tolerate certainty, or when you don't like uncertainty like that, it can really stop you from taking risks and stepping out of your comfort zone because you're concerned about what might happen. It goes along with that excessive worry as well. And then I can't ask for help. And those of you who relate to this one, which is a fear of showing weaknesses, you probably have a bit of a mindset where you have to be strong all the time, and you probably do keep going as long as you can, and then you go on holiday and you get sick when you go on holiday because you've been holding it all together until the point where you get to go on holiday. So there will be different ones that resonate with different people more strongly on the call today. Let's just have a look at the poll and see what comes through in terms of which one resonates most strongly for you from those different limiting mindsets and beliefs.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for that, Mary, we've got a lot of people, these statements are really resonating with people in the chat. Someone said perfectionism is exhausting. And
it is.
Yeah, these are, it's really helpful, I think, for people to see these.
Yes, very, very good. Gail's just put all of them are relevant to me. I can relate to that, Gail. There are different times where different voices might raise their heads, I think, can't they? So, but choose the one that resonates the most strongly. You might find there's one that you use more often than not. I know, for example, mine is the second one. Is the put downs is the one that I see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it tends to be the excessive worry, which probably leads to a little bit of catastrophizing at times.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes, that's a great example, isn't it? Where everything's going to go, the whole world is going to stop because I missed this deadline. Completely. Yes.
Mine's perfectionism. That's my one.
Oh yeah.
Able to leave things and step away. So now someone once said to me, and we're going to come on to this, but changing the mindset to being excellent rather than perfect.
Yeah, that's a good distinction, actually. Yeah, very good. Okay, well, we've got a good amount of people have completed, so I suggest let's share the results. And what we can see there is actually imposter syndrome and perfectionism are quite well matched there. I think imposter syndrome slightly gets it by 41%, perfectionism 39%, and then we've got putting yourself down, afraid of showing weakness, and excessive worry all coming in quite close to each other as well. Intolerance of uncertainty is a lot less. None of these, got a small amount of people who, none of them are the ones that they relate, but be interested to see for yourself. You may well be able to explore for yourself what might be the things that get in the way or might hold you back at times.
And of course, one of the things we do, Mary, isn't it, is that we do a lot of hearing from each other on the workshops.
Yes.
So we learn so much from each other. I think that's one of the things that people love about coming on these programs, is hearing each other's perspectives and tips and tricks.
Yeah, absolutely. And people talk about how it's just so lovely to share with each other and hear that they're not alone. They're not the only person in the world that might feel this way at times. And no matter what organisation you work for, the common threads that come through from the challenges that people share as well. And what's helpful there is, coming together, you can find different ways round the challenges that you might be facing as well, because someone will have a suggestion that you've not heard of before as well.
So this is a really good one for the buddy conversations, and we put this on the worksheet for people to have those conversations with their buddies.
Yeah, that would be great. Really, really good. So let's have a look at the next piece, which is, we've kind of presented these limiting mindsets and beliefs, but we also offer you something that you can do about it. And we talk about reframing. So I always use that classic saying, you may or may not have heard of it: when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. And the whole idea is that's underneath that saying is, this might not be what you want, it might not be fantastic, but what is the good that you can make out of it? And reframing is a great way to do that. So what you can do is, for example, we look at these limiting beliefs of imposter. I've been getting away with it, but I'm bound to be found out soon. You could reframe that by, I may not know all the answers, because, whoever knows all the answers? Nobody does. I may not know all the answers, but I know enough to find out. And then I'm not good enough. There's no point in trying. That's putting self down. How that could be reframed is just reminding yourself, I have strengths and I have much to offer. And then on the other side, the excessive worry, what if it all goes wrong? If it goes wrong, I can deal with it and learn from it. And remind yourself of your strengths that you've got that will help you deal with it. And if I don't do things perfectly, then I failed. Making a mistake is part of how I learn and grow. Absolutely. And I have another great saying that I use, which is, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. You absolutely just learn from whatever you do. And all these reframes help you to consider what resources you have and how you can focus on shifting that mindset and belief in order to access those resources and carry yourself through and deal with the situations that you're having to face within work and navigating your career. So what we do with this is, having identified that we do have these limiting beliefs, is we then put you into a partner exercise where you get the chance to discuss an unhelpful thought that might be holding you back, and how you can reframe that for yourself and how you can shift that limiting belief. And the whole thing about beliefs is we make them true for ourselves. But the whole thing about life is there is never just one truth. There are always several truths. And by reframing it into a more positive belief that's going to empower you, that is going to help you move forward and create a strategy for managing yourself and addressing the different challenges that you may be facing. So that's a really useful exercise that we get people to do. And on the back of that, we then move into a review of the day and getting into action planning. And we do that through buddy conversations. So I'm going to go full circle now and hand back to Orla, who's going to take us through the final parts of the day.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mary. And just before we do move into the buddy conversations, I was just going to check, there's something in the chat about, have we got a reframe for a fear of showing weakness and asking for help? Let's have a think about that. What could we offer as a reframe for that fear of showing weakness and asking for help?
So I've got not so much the fear of showing weakness, but the asking for help is that people actually enjoy giving. So when you don't ask for help, you're limiting people's ability to give to you. And also when you do ask for help, that increases connection with people. So you may be fearful of showing vulnerability, But actually, by being vulnerable and asking for help, that helps you build relationships with others. And they think, oh gosh, you're a human being. I can work with you. You have vulnerabilities just like I do. So it really helps increase that connection. That's just I don't know whether that's a reframe, but that's my answer to that.
I think you're getting a lot of positive comments for that in the asking for help demonstrates a willingness to learn and develop. Yeah.
Yes.
And is more authentic. And I think that whole vulnerability piece is really important.
Yes.
And can demonstrate, for me, when I'm afraid to ask for help, I reframe it as collaboration. So who could I collaborate with, rather than it being about me, but about who could I include, who else might learn something from working with me on this.
That's right. And leadership is not a solitary act. As a leader, you have to engage with others. It's very difficult to lead and be totally alone as a leader.
And it's great role modelling, isn't it? You know, to show that, you know, it's okay to be the most senior person in the room still asking for help. How can we do this together?
Yes.
And it makes you much more approachable, I think.
Yeah, and someone's put on it also demonstrates your faith in the person you are asking, which is a compliment and can lift them. I totally agree. And especially, you know, if we think about all people in our teams, not just our peers, but at all levels, you know, I think we forget that actually asking other people's opinions and for their help can be a real compliment to them as well. So great reframing. Thanks for that, the question in the chat. And so just before we do questions, so we'll pick up on any other questions. You can pop them in the Q&A or pop them in the chat. But just to let you know that, as Mary said, we finished the day with these buddy conversations. So really encourage you, from what we've talked about today, use your worksheet, share with your buddy, or find a buddy to share and have some of these conversations with, either in your organizations, or, as I say, if you want a buddy from amongst this group, you can just email us and I'll try and connect you. If we could just, Ugne, if you could do the evaluation poll, because we do want to know how today went. So just to let you know, for our next session, we're going to be looking at leading with presence and impact. And then we are going to actually have Colette is going to be running the next session with Gail, one of our other facilitators. And I'm going to give you a bit of homework before the next session. So those of you who are still on, a little bit of a homework that will help you when we come into the next session. So what I'd like you to do between now and next week, if you'd like to, is just pick a few people who know you well, and ask them for 5 words to describe you, just off the top of their heads. Just what 5 words first come to mind when you think of me? And I think you'll find that an interesting activity, and we'll pick up on that at our next session when we look at personal brand and profile and reputation. So offering that as a little bit of homework the next week that might be useful. And then, as I say, keep up your buddy conversations to review your actions from today and thinking from these sessions. So I hope today's given you a flavour of how we deliver our programmes, as well as started your own thinking in this area of confidence and resilience. So we're happy to take any, I'm going to bring the slides, stop sharing so we can see everyone. So I'll stop sharing. So, and I'm going to check the Q&A, but if anyone wants to pop anything in the chat as well. So let's have a look. So worksheets, yes, we can send there. So Maria's put, my best motivation is when I have a recognised work. So recognition, that's often really important for women, isn't it? Mm. And a question for all, how often would men on development need to consider their current career options, choices against life plans? Do we need to include this as standard for all, or do we move away from asking this on female-centric development? How often would men on development?
That is a good question. I mean, what that brings up for me, Orla, is that, you know, men are generally much more career focused and it's to do with how each sex is brought up, I think. There's a lot to do with that. But research has said that even at university, men are starting to network, for example, and take on roles like chairing the rowing committee or whatever it is they're going to do. But they take on roles of responsibility. So they start to develop their leadership right at university and start making connections with people that are going to be important to them in their careers. Whereas women don't necessarily think in such a strategic way about that. So, I mean, yes, I'm sure it's useful for men to look at those time pies as well. It's useful for everybody too. But men enter the workplace with an advantage because already it's kind of normalised that they think much more proactively about their careers than women do.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, Mary, because we know it's often referred to as that broken rung. That so if you've got men and women joining an organisation at 50%, even into moving into those first line management positions, because you talk about graduates, then the gap starts to widen. So it's about 50-50 moving into the, equally, which you'd expect. So it's starting to fall behind right from the beginning.
Yes.
Just pulling out a different question from the chat. I can see from Jessica, how do you move forward into reframing your unhelpful thoughts? And this is, when you feel at home in them, as she's put, despite knowing they're working against you. And that was a great observation. And I think that, this is something we really do look at on the workshops in terms of understanding triggers, isn't it? What are those specific moments when these things happen? That's kind of the first thing as coaches, we talk about noticing what are the patterns, what are the moments. And then you can start working out how you practice, and it's about experimenting, and that's one of the things we do a lot of, I think, on the program, is encouraging you to go out and experiment. It's almost as important what you do between the modules as it is in terms of what you do during the modules.
There's someone also asking for a copy of the research, Orla.
Yes,
and would like details of the program.
Yeah, and details of the programme. Someone's mentioned about the neuroscience, which is a whole other area, but we can actually, the reframing is a way of rewiring, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And the whole thing is that we are hardwired, and as that question before about we're in our comfort zones where we're having those negative thoughts. It is about stretching yourself in a different way. And the more we do reframe and try things out and take small steps, the more we will start to rewire ourselves. And that will affect the neurons that there are in the brain.
Yeah. Someone's mentioned, I know this is something, Mary, we've talked about, but someone's mentioned about mental load, the mental. So we might not necessarily always do everything, but we seem to carry the mental load for things, don't we?
Yes, so there's a book actually, and I've got the book. It's a very interesting one because it's all cartoons, but it's got it's very impactful in terms of the messages that although there's meant to be equality and women work and men work, even now women carry the mental load. So for example, little Johnny's got to be collected from school. Who's thinking about it? It's usually the woman that's worrying about that and also doing the organisation to make sure that happens. And even in my own relationship, it's usually me thinking about what we're going to have for supper, not my partner. He just turns up at 6 o'clock and says, "We got nothing for supper then." So there's something about how we've been indoctrinated as women that we carry that mental load. And again, this comes back to when we start thinking about boundaries and what you're prepared to set up in your life. And maybe, one of our inspiring speakers that we had once was saying, a really important element was having her partner's backing and making sure they worked together to run the house. And we also had a woman on our course who her husband did all the cooking. That was just how it was because she was not a cook. So it is about how do you negotiate and run the whole of your life so that you're not completely exhausted by carrying everything, which is the risk for women, particularly as they tend to carry more of the mental load. And boundaries and setting those boundaries, really, really important for that.
Lovely, thanks, Mary.
There's something about checking in with the assumptions we make, isn't there? We all make a lot of assumptions about what the other person is thinking and feeling. And I think that's one of the things we talk about, again, on the programme, is encouraging you to do more checking in. What are you actually thinking and feeling? Because I think even with the people we live with, certainly with my husband, I do make a lot of assumptions sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just picking up a question here from Ariana. Oh, I just flicked past, but she was saying that sometimes growth and stress go hand in hand, and the two are bound together. Is this something I can look at differently?
Well, do you know, as soon as you said that, I nodded my head furiously because I can think of times in my life where I felt very stressed, and it's because I tend to like to be out of my comfort zone. But on this occasion, I put myself out of my comfort zone on so many different areas of my life. I was absolutely in panic zone. So what we encourage you to do is to be clear about when are you out of your comfort zone. And for you, Orla, what might be a little step for me might take you out of your comfort zone. We're all different. We all have our different ways of measuring it. But when are you out of your comfort zone? And when do you know you're getting towards your panic zone? And we encourage you not to go into your panic zone, because we want you to be able to feel stretched, but for that to be purposeful and meaningful for you so that you do grow with that. Whereas if you go into panic, there's a risk that you might jump right back into your comfort zone because it was just too uncomfortable being out there. So it's finding that balance, really.
Yeah. Nikki, I wanted to ask you, there's a question in the Q&A about the need for recognition. And someone's put here that that in the industry I operate, don't believe in recognition, they believe in working harder, and that I feel in order to get recognition, I have to take on far more stuff than I should, and get frustrated with the lack of recognition. And then that becomes a vicious cycle, doesn't it, where you're thinking I'm not as good as I think I am. I'll just offer one thing and then see what you think, Nikki. But I think for me in that, and I've definitely been there before, for me, it's been about being really purposeful around what exactly is recognised. If you watch really carefully, you can start to spot in the organisation, is it that the recognition comes really from taking on that project, or are you just the helpful hands, which are the sorts of projects that actually give you more visibility and that you're going to get something from as well in terms of taking those on. So for me, it's about, I think recognition can be quite a broad term, but I think I've learned to observe what actually really gets value in the organisation. And then focus on picking those sorts of projects and doing that sort of work rather than doing everything that I'm asked to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and that certainly resonates. I also, just slightly flipping it on its head, I think there's something about, if recognition is something that, is very important for you, there's also something about learning to feed back to yourself as well. And because, some organisations do it better than others, and it may be that you're really happy in your organisation, but they just don't do the recognition piece particularly well. So I think I think there's also another aspect here of being able to feed back positively to yourself, because I think the more senior you become as a leader, the harder it is sometimes to get that recognition. I don't know whether that's helpful or not. I don't know. Mary, have you got a different thought on that?
No, I think we sometimes talk about the 5 languages of love and how we all have these different ways of being acknowledged and recognised. And one of mine is definitely, I like people to say, oh, you're amazing, you did that fantastically. But absolutely what you've just said, Nikki, the more senior you get in an organisation, the more you have to learn to be more self-reliant and recognise for yourself what you're doing, noticing for yourself what you're achieving, not always seeking it from externally. So becoming more self-referenced. And actually, this is something that men tend to do. Their locus of control, which is that internal self-referencing, tends to be bigger than women's. Women tend to look more outside themselves for that acknowledgement. And one thing we need to learn is to actually acknowledge ourselves a lot more.
Lovely.
I'm
Thanks,
smiling as you say that, Mary, because my husband last night said, I think I was really good at that speech last week.
He probably was. We've only got 1 minute left, and I know everyone for staying on. I'm just going to answer the last question that's on the Q&A, which says, going through the menopause has massively impacted my confidence. Does it address this? Well, I think that's a hot topic that is very current and relevant. But I'll just close this session by saying it doesn't matter whether it's menopause or anything else. It's all about being kind to ourselves. So I think perhaps the one thought we can leave you with from this session is this week is for everyone to be kind to themselves and hold those positive thoughts about what you can achieve this week. So we'll leave you with that positive ending, and enjoy your week, and we'll see you next Monday for Leading with Impact and Brand. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.